Unilateral action that the Trump administration has taken today against every nation in the world does not come as a surprise. For Australia, these tariffs are not unexpected, but let me be clear, they are totally unwarranted. President Trump referred to reciprocal tariffs. A reciprocal tariff would be zero, not 10%. The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations partnership. This is not the act of a friend. Today's decision will add to uncertainty in the global economy, and it will push up costs for American households. It is the American people who will pay the biggest price for these unjustified tariffs. This is why our government will not be seeking to impose reciprocal tariffs. We will not join a race to the bottom that leads to higher prices and slower growth. We will stand up for Australia. We will continue to make the strongest case for these unjustified tariffs to be removed from our exporters. Our existing free trade agreement with the United States contains dispute resolution mechanisms. We want to resolve this issue without resorting to using these, as we do support continued constructive engagement with our friends in the United States. Our shared history, our friendship, our alliance, these are all bigger than a poor decision. But the Australian people have every right to view this action by the Trump administration as undermining our free and fair trading relationship and counter to the shared values that have always been at the heart of our two nations' long-standing friendship. This will have consequences for how Australians see this relationship. These are uncertain times, but Australians can be absolutely certain of this. Our government will always stand up for Australian jobs, Australian industry, Australian consumers, and Australian values. That is why we've been crystal clear with the United States about what is not up for negotiation. Australia is a great trading nation. 1 in 4 of our jobs depends upon trade. But we'll never trade away the things which make us the best country in the world.
Ricordare che gli Stati Uniti sono il secondo mercato di destinazione con un export che è salito nel 2024 del 17%. Quello statunitense chiaramente per noi è un mercato fondamentale. È evidente che l'introduzione di nuovi dazi avrebbe risvolti pesanti per i produttori italiani. Penso personalmente che sarebbe anche un'ingiustizia per molti americani, perché limiterebbe la possibilità di acquistare e consumare le nostre eccellenze solo a chi ha, diciamo, la possibilità economica, no, di spendere di più, e è la ragione per la quale resto convinta che si debba lavorare per scongiurare in tutti i modi possibili una guerra commerciale che non avvantaggerebbe nessuno negli Stati Uniti né nell'Europa, il che ovviamente non esclude, se necessario, di dover anche immaginare risposte adeguate a difendere le nostre produzioni. Del resto la difesa del nostro agroalimentare è stata una priorità per questo governo fin dal suo insediamento. Lo abbiamo fatto con stanziamenti e investimenti record come mai si erano visti, lo abbiamo fatto investendo sulla competitività delle filiere, contrastando la contraffazione e la concorrenza sleale, lo abbiamo fatto puntando sulla formazione per avvicinare sempre di più i giovani a un mondo che ha bisogno del loro entusiasmo.
Last night, the President of the United States acted for his country, and that is his mandate. Today, I will act in Britain's interests with mine. I understand how important this is for your businesses, as it is for the British people. So we move now to the next stage of our plan. Decisions we take in coming days and weeks will be guided only by our national interest, in the interests of our economy, in the interests of businesses around this table, in the interests of putting money in the pockets of working people. Nothing else will guide me. That is my focus. Now, clearly there will be an economic impact from the decisions that the US has taken, both here and globally. but I want to be crystal clear. We are prepared. Indeed, one of the great strengths of this nation is our ability to keep a cool head. I said that in my first speech as Prime Minister, and that is how I govern. That is how we have planned, and that is exactly what is required today. Nobody wins in a trade war. That is not in our national interest. We have a fair and balanced trade relationship with the US, negotiations on an economic prosperity deal, one that strengthens our existing trading relationship. They continue, and we will fight for the best deal for Britain. Nonetheless, I want to be clear. I will only strike a deal if it is in our national interest, and if it is the right thing to do for the security of working people, protects the pound in their pocket that they work so hard to earn for their family. That is my priority. That is always my priority. So today marks a new stage in our preparations. We have a range of levers at our disposal, and we will continue our work with businesses across the country to discuss their assessment of the options. As I say, our intention remains to secure a deal, but nothing is off the table. We have to understand that just as with defence and security, so too for the economy and trade. We are living in a changing world, entering a new era. We must rise to this challenge, and that is why I've instructed my team to move further and faster on the changes I believe will make our economy stronger and more resilient. Because this government will do everything necessary to defend the UK's national interest, everything necessary to provide the foundation of security that working people need to get on with their lives. That is how we have acted and how we will continue to act, with pragmatism, cool and calm heads focused on our national security.
President Trump's announcement of universal tariffs on the whole world, including the European Union, is a major blow to the world economy. I deeply regret this choice. Let's be clear-eyed about the immense consequences. The global economy will massively suffer. Uncertainty will spiral and trigger the rise of further protectionism. The consequences will be dire for millions of people around the globe, also for the most vulnerable countries, which are now subject to some of the highest US tariffs, the opposite of what we wanted to achieve. The tariffs will also hurt consumers around the world. It will be felt immediately. Millions of citizens will face higher grocery bills, medication will cost more, as well as transportation. Inflation will go up, and this is hurting in particular the most vulnerable citizens. All businesses, big and small, will suffer from day one, from greater uncertainty to the disruption of supply chains, to burdensome bureaucracy. The costs of doing business with the United States will drastically increase. And what is more, there seems to be no order in the disorder, no clear path through the complexity and chaos that is being created as all US trading partners are hit. In the past 80 years, trade between the European Union and the United States has created millions of jobs. Consumers across the Atlantic have benefited from reduced prices. Businesses have benefited from huge opportunities, leading to unprecedented growth and prosperity. And at the same time, we know that the global trading system has serious deficiencies. I agree with President Trump that others are taking unfair advantage of the current rules. And I'm ready to support any efforts to make the global trading system fit for the realities of the global economy. But I also want to be clear. Reaching for tariffs as your first and last tool will not fix it. This is why from the outset, we have always been ready to negotiate with the United States to remove the remaining barriers to transatlantic trade. At the same time, we are prepared to respond. We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel. And we're now preparing for further countermeasures to protect our interests and our businesses if negotiations fail. We will also be watching closely what indirect effects these tariffs could have, because we cannot absorb global overcapacity, nor will we accept dumping on our markets. As Europeans, we will always promote and defend our interests and our values, and we will always stand up for Europe. But there is an alternative path. It is not too late to address concerns through negotiations. This is why our Trade Commissioner, Maroš Šefčovič, is permanently engaged with his US counterparts. We will work towards reducing barriers, not raising them. So let's move from confrontation to negotiation. Finally, I would like to speak directly to my fellow Europeans. I know that many of you feel let down by our oldest ally. Yes, we must brace for the impact that this will inevitably have. Europe has everything it needs to make it through the storm. We are in this together. If you take on one of us, you take on all of us. So we will stand together and stand up for each other. Our unity is our strength. Europe has the largest single market in the world, 450 million consumers. That is our safe harbor in tumultuous times. And Europe will stand at the side of those directly impacted. We have already announced new measures to support the steel and cars sectors. Last week, we limited the amount of steel that can be imported to Europe tariff-free. This will give more breathing space to these strategic industries. Now, we will also convene strategic dialogues with the steel, the automotive, and the pharmaceutical sectors, and others will follow. Europe stands together.
President Trump has just announced a series of measures that are going to fundamentally change the international trading system. Now, in doing so, he has preserved a number of important elements of our relationship, the commercial relationship between Canada and the United States. But the fentanyl tariffs still remain in place, as do the tariffs for steel and aluminum. As of this evening, the tariffs on automobiles will enter into force, and the U.S. has signaled that there will be additional tariffs in so-called strategic sectors, pharmaceuticals, lumber, and semiconductors. So we're in a situation where there is going to be an impact on the U.S. economy, which will build with time. In our judgment, it will be negative on the U.S. economy. That will have an impact on us. But the series of measures will directly affect millions of Canadians. We are going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures. We are going to protect our workers, and we are going to build the strongest economy in the G7. In a crisis, it's important to come together, and it's essential to act with purpose and with force, and that's what we will do.
TV, on April 2nd Eastern Time, the U.S. issued an executive order announcing reciprocal tariffs on its major trading partners. It imposed a 34% tariffs on China, including its Hong Kong and Macau region. Do you have any comments?
对包括中国在内的多国输美产品加征关税，严重违反世贸组织规则，严重损害以规则为基础的多边贸易体制。中方对此坚决反对，将采取必要措施，坚定维护自身正当利益。中方多次强调，贸易战、关税战没有赢家。 保护主义没有出路。中方敦促美方纠正错误做法，以平等、尊重、互惠的方式，同包括中国在内的世界各国磋商解决贸易分歧。
In the way of equality, respect and reciprocity to resolve trade and economic disputes with China and other countries through consultation.
Allow me to start by saying just a few words about yesterday evening's news on trade from the US. First of all, it is regrettable, but at the same time quite expected. I think The Economist, the newspaper Economist, described it quite well this morning, saying that this takes America's trade policies back to the 19th century. A friend of mine was more precise, 1909 to be more precise. However, Sweden and European Union, we are well prepared for this. We are ready to retaliate if that is needed. Our preferred option is, of course, not to do so, but to negotiate a deal. We don't want to have growing trade barriers between our two continents. We do not want a trade war. But if this fails, the EU obviously stands ready with countermeasures as well. And the EU is a big trading power globally. This is not a threat, this is a promise. Our goal is, of course, not to go that path, but to lower tariffs and to increase trade instead, with the US and with other countries as well. The best way would have been a formalized trade agreement between the EU and the US. That potential existed just a few years ago. That door was closed at the time. But we have learned that free trade was actually what made us prosperous, and it did make the world a safer place. That's a path we want to walk also in the future.